Is your office?
Yeah.
Are they mowing?
They demoed the mall.
Because they don't have.
Yeah.
They're
Use it or
remodeling the city hall, and then they're building an addition on it.
PGRs?
Because basically,
You want me to plug it in?
it's
We're
on
gonna put everything on
stilts.
that one.
So they got.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Enclose the
Right.
mall floor area.
Yeah. You going back there?
I'll go ahead and call the meeting to order, and we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We had the minutes from the last meeting. Everybody had a chance to look at them. If there's no changes, do I have a motion to approve?
Make a motion to approve the minutes from July 7th.
Is there a second?
I move to approve the minutes.
Is there a second?
I will second with just a smidgen of a change, which I just gave to Casey here under Public Works Supervisors, so it shows.
Okay.
And change just as wood, but don't know what. So.
Probably moved and seconded to approve the minutes. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. We have the bills. Has everybody had a chance to look at them? Don't have any changes or questions? Do I have a motion to approve?
I move to approve the bills.
Moved by Paul. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Seconded by John. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed? Motion carries. Last item we have is the delinquent bill, utility bill list. A motion to approve for shut-offs.
I move to approve the shut-offs.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Moved by Paul, seconded by Jason. Is there any other discussion? Nicole?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Jason?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
And a yes for me. Motion carries. Next item is, we have any citizens that would like to address the commission tonight?
No.
Just so everybody's aware, we moved this at the last meeting to move it up further in the meeting, so. Commissioners and officers, do you want to wait for your reports until after new business? So we can get through our two reports? Does that sound okay?
Sounds okay to me.
All right, we'll then go on to DGR with Chad.
Just for those of you that don't know Chad, he's with DGR. So he's the one that did all the engineering of our project. So I want to thank DGR for doing all that work. I'll tell you that all these gentlemen up here at the top of their professions. They're all supervisors, they're all in charge. So if you have any questions, commissioners, please, they're gonna be able to answer all them, so.
Okay, thanks, everyone. Got Chad Rasmussen with DGR Engineering, and going to go over this electric system study that we've prepared for your community. Have given all the commissioners a bound copy of the report. I'm not intending to go through all the details of that report today, or we'll be here for a few hours. We have gone through the details with staff, and Roy and Paul were both present at that meeting as well. If people want to get into details or have questions, please feel free to stop me, ask questions along the way. But otherwise, I'm just going to kind of run right through here. So I want to start off talking a little bit about your existing system here in Hillsboro. The transmission system, there are two called 69 kV power lines coming to town, 69,000 volts. Those are owned by Xcel Energy. And they're operated in what's called open loop fashion. And what that means is that if there is a problem on the transmission system, you do have two lines to town, but if there's a problem on one of the lines, it has to be manually put back in place. So closed loop means it's automatically restores itself. Open loop means that if there's a problem, they manually perform intervention to switch you back in service. I understand transmission service has been pretty reliable, but just want to make mention of that. It is open loop connected. So that's how you connect to the grid in the 69 kV system. You also have some local generation in town. So in the event the transmission system goes out, you have the capability to power up your Caterpillar gensets that are located at the Trail substation. There's two of those high-speed diesel gensets. They give you about 4 megawatts of local generation capacity. Okay, so 4,000 kilowatts. We'll talk a little bit about what your load is, but that's not enough power to cover the community most of the time. But it is a great source of backup power in the event that you do have a transmission outage, and you can pick up any of the customers on your system by doing distribution systems. You have a contract with Emirates, your power supplier, to purchase output of those generators. So it's a good deal where it's basically paid for that investment, I guess. You have two substations in town. And what a substation is, that's where the power is transformed from high voltage, 69 kV, down to what we call distribution voltage. In your case, that's 4.16 kV. The Trail substation is located on the south central part of town. 3 circuits out of there. There's one main transformer there, 69 kV. That one is rated dual voltage on the low side. It's presently connected at 4.16 kV, but does have the capability to be connected at 12.5. We can't use both those voltages at once. We can only use one or the other. So it's presently hooked up to 4.16 kV because that's your system voltage. The total capacity on that transformer is 5.6 MVA, or 5,600 kilowatts. There's a combination of indoor and outdoor breakers at that substation. The indoor breakers are pretty much part of the generation plant facility, and then outdoor breakers are used for the circuits in town. The transformer at that substation is 45 years old. Reclosers are 40 plus years old. The Hillsboro substation, that's the little one right by the interstate here. Also 3 circuits served out of that sub. Again, one main transformer. That one is rated 5 MVA or 5,000 kVA on the top end. There's an outdoor buswork and recloser arrangement there also. That transformer was rebuilt 41 years ago, meaning it's older than that. And there are a couple of reclosers there that are 40 plus years old as well. One of them has been replaced over the years. So you can see a lot of old equipment at these substations. Usually when we're installing, designing facilities, 30, 40-year lifespan is what we're figuring. You know, it can last longer, but let's just say that that equipment is towards the end of its lifespan. This is a diagram of, just shows how everything's connected. At the top there, the blue line, and this is in the back of your reports too. At the top there, the blue line is the transmission system. Comes into easier way to show it by pointing at it. Comes into a substation transformer through a set of voltage regulators to indoor switchgear. Here, connected to outdoor switchgear into each of the 3 circuits. 610 kV extends over to the Hillsboro sub through a transformer, through voltage regulators, and down to circuits again. So that's to the substations. Then from there it goes on the distribution system. Again, I mentioned your system voltage being 4.16 kV, or 4,160 volts. 6 circuits in total. 56% of your system is underground, meaning 44% is overhead. And many of those overhead segments are very old. We definitely noticed there's some areas for improvement in what we call sectionalizing. And sectionalizing means when you have a problem on the system, you try to install fuses or breakers to limit the amount of area that's affected when you have a problem, so it doesn't take out large parts of the system. So you need more of that equipment to be installed. Also, it would be helpful to get a lot more backfeeding on the system. So if you have a problem, you have ways to tie it to other circuits and reduce the amount of time that you have an outage when you have something fail. This is a map of the distribution system. Again, all these figures are in the back of the report. You see the 2 substations that are the square boxes. Hillsboro on the left, Trail on the bottom, and the 6 different colors of the 6 different circuits throughout the community. I just want to pull this map up. What this distinguishes is the difference between overhead and underground. So the red lines are overhead, and the blue lines are underground. As you can see, it's pretty normal. Most of the outer parts of town are your underground sections, generally the newer parts of the system. Older parts are more in the center part of the town.
The red is overhead, the blue are underground.
Correct.
And you said the newer ones are the red?
The newer ones are the blue.
The newer ones are the blue. Right.
So most of the newer construction has been done underground fashion, which is typical.
So you've never moved the overhead to underground?
Yeah.
For the overhead, does anyone ever put them underground?
Yes. Yes. And actually, we'll get into that, but we're recommending that you bury lines. Great question. Any other questions about the existing system before I move on? Okay, next piece I want to cover is what we call load growth on the system. This chart here shows the dots on the left are history, and the arrows on the right are future. The blue line is what we call winter electric peaks. The red line is summer electric peaks. What you see happening, your summer's been going up. Winter's been holding pretty steady, although this last winter actually shot way up. This graph is out of date. The winter peak actually got above 10 megawatts, meaning that it got all the way up to here this last winter. If you remember what I said the capacity of those 2 substation transformers was 5 plus 5.6, that's 10.6 megawatts. You got up to a point where you were at full capacity. What happens if we lose one of those transformers? That's a problem.
And the reason that went down was because of natural gas, you're suspecting, on the winter side, back those years, because we added natural gas.
Partially that 2023 was a fairly mild winter too, so you probably didn't have as much electric load either.
But that's what helped it keep kind of stable, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
So otherwise it would have probably been higher.
Sure.
How about the summer? Did you see anything different last summer? Did it follow up as well?
Pretty steady
It
last summer.
held pretty steady. We did see some peaks here and there, but that a lot of it was like with when we were dealing with anchor. But other than that, it was pretty steady. So, but yeah, we are like right at our max.
And as we look into the future, so going back 4 years, been growing at about almost 5% growth rate, which is very healthy. When we talked with the staff about things that were happening in the community, it was not hard to come up with enough potential load additions to the system to, in 10 years, be at a 6% growth rate in the summertime. So that's what we ended up doing our plan around, was a 6% growth rate, which gets you to a summertime peak of almost 10 megawatts in 10 years out. And in the wintertime, about 13 megawatts. What I would say is that we're usually more concerned about summertime peaks because electrical equipment, we can overload it a little bit in the wintertime. It's all thermal ratings is what we're concerned about. Heat is what breaks down insulation on that equipment and can cause premature failure. So we're most concerned about winter peaks, although you can only go so much over in some winter. So I don't want to say you can go double or something like that, but we can go a little over. But it's the summertime ones that we're used more.
We know what Yerk does, right?
That was one of the reasons during the wintertime when it got up to the 10 megs, it was like probably one of the coldest part of the winter. So that, I was chewing on my nails knowing that it was that high, but luckily it was, the cold weather helped it to maintain itself. So
That would have been a perfect example, right?
yeah, exactly.
Okay, so that load growth that I talked about, this map here is figure 7 in the back of the report, but basically what we did was we took that additional load that was projected and we picked out what parts of the community that we thought that load was going to occur with input of staff. And we know about your industrial park, obviously. We've got the water plant, treatment plant that's going to be coming online. A few residential areas around town as well. School addition, so some commercial growth. It was not hard at all to come up with that projected load amount. Okay, next thing I want to talk about is setting up the analysis that we do and talk a little bit about the criteria of design that we use for that. And the first thing in distribution planning is we use what's called a single contingency level of reliability. And basically that's a fancy word for saying if we lose a piece of equipment, any one piece of equipment, we still should be able to back it up. Okay, so if someone drives into a pole, knocks over a line, we should have a way to backfeed that circuit from somewhere else. If a transformer blows up in a substation, we should be able to use the other substation to pick things up. So we use a single contingency level of reliability. When you get into transmission planning, you actually get into like double contingency planning. But at distribution level, we plan on one thing out at a time. Okay, we also want to maintain good voltage service to all customers, both under normal or emergency conditions. So the voltage isn't within allowable limits. Things aren't going to work right. Damaged equipment or stuff's just not going to work. So we want to maintain good voltage service. We also do not want to overload equipment under normal or emergency conditions. Again, overloading equipment is what causes that equipment to fail. Large utilities like Excel may run things a little different where they've got a lot of inventory, let's say. A municipal like yourself doesn't have a lot of equipment on standby that they can just slap in if something overloads. So we want to make sure that we're designing a system to not be overloading equipment and causing premature failure. Flexibility in operations, and this really comes down to, when there's problems on the system, the guys shouldn't have to work to do 20 switching operations to get a circuit back in service. There should be a reasonable amount of capability on the system for it to be flexible in operation and to get the customers back on quickly. And last, we want to set up a system that's expandable to accommodate low growth in an orderly way. When you get that new, potential customer coming to town, you don't want to have to tell them, sorry, it's going to be 5 years till we can feed you, I guess. So you want the system set up in a way that you can accommodate low growth within reason. You can't expect that you want to overbuild the system, to have way too much capacity, but you want enough to be able to bring your customers in. Any questions on that design criteria?
Just a quick comment on the or he was talking about good voltage service to all customers and stuff like that, just know that, whenever there's a criteria that we have to follow, or we get fined for not following that certain criteria, has to keep people at a certain rate, that voltage. And if you fall way below a certain number, I'm not sure exactly the number, Chad probably say better than I could, but I know that the city will have to pay. There's a fine, penalty. So just that to keep in mind when we're talking about stuff like that. When it's good, we're good. But when it's bouncing around a lot and it's going down a certain criteria that it's supposed to be at, then yeah, the city has to pay. So just keep that in mind.
Okay, so talk next about the system analysis that we performed. We did what's called load flow modeling, and basically it's a fancy word for saying we built a computer model of your system to represent what happens in real time, I guess. We use mapping information, metering information, and a program called MillSoft Windmill to create a computer model of the electric system. With that, we can perform voltage and capacity analysis of your system, and then actually go through and simulate fault conditions and do those things that I mentioned. You know, take this circuit out of service, backfeed it, take this transformer out of service, backfeed it. What happens on the system? What is the voltage on the end of the line? Are we seeing any overloaded conductors, etc.? And then also, we're doing that for today's loads, but that load growth that we talked about, we apply that to the model as well. And we go through and do all that analysis for future loading conditions. We also look at equipment age and condition and take that into consideration as we're thinking about improvements to the system. And obviously gathered input from operating personnel to understand where they see pinch points on the system or trouble areas. And again, the back of the report behind Appendix 8, there's a bunch of pages showing the results of different modeling scenarios. Not going to go through those, I'm just going to summarize what we found. But basically, when you see red, it means that the voltage is outside of our planning criteria for it's called low voltage. And when you see green, it means you're outside of our planning criteria for capacity. So if things are black, it means they're okay, they're good. But if they're showing up red or green, it means that there's some problems on the system. In each of those sheets, the system configuration is shown on the right, how the circuits are configured, and on the left is the result of the analysis graphically. And then you can see in tabular format as well, there the amps on each circuit, are we having problems, is shown in green. And the voltage at the end of the line, if it's showing up in red, it means it's low voltage. So this happens to be actually system intact during the winter peak. We do have some areas that are over 80% capacity. Doesn't mean they're overloaded yet, but they're approaching that. And then red means that they're low voltage on the system. This is a different scenario. Looks like we lost feeder 1. In the lower right, it shows how the system is configured again and which switches that we opened or closed to make that configuration work. In this case, we had overloaded lines well in excess of their rating, and then voltage that was really problematic in that scenario. So again, if you'd like to get into all the details, happy to do that, but in the essence of time here, I'm just going to kind of summarize things. Really, the crux of it is the existing 4.16 kV distribution system has reached its limits. For a community of your size and the load that you have, it's really time for a voltage conversion. There's poor voltage conditions and circuit overloading issues under various system intact and outage conditions. The loss of either substation is especially problematic. So again, I'll knock on wood as I'm saying that. I hope that never happens to you folks, but you do have a situation where your load is going to exceed the available capacity in your substation. If you lose one of those substation transformers today. You could run the generators to try to unload that remaining transformer, but that's very expensive to do. And depending on when it happens, it may still not be enough to cover everything. I mentioned before that substation equipment is mostly 40, 45 plus years old. So it's at the end of its useful life and it needs to be upgraded. There are a fair number of what we call radial segments on the system with no backup or tie capability. There's also some areas of the system that have old cables with what's called open concentric neutrals. They're not jacketed, and over the years, those neutrals tend to corrode away and can cause faults. So one of the things we're going to recommend is getting those replaced. I mentioned before the need for additional sectionalizing capability to isolate faults to smaller areas, and that's just kind of how we set up the upgraded distribution system. Will be to include more fusing and switching on the system. And then those older overhead portions of the system, really should be converted to underground. They're old, hanging in the air. We recommend not going back with overhead poles. As you upgrade it, let's bury it. It's just a much more reliable system once it's in the ground. Any question on that list? Makes sense?
That getting it, that sectionalizing it, that's pretty important. And that really concerned me talking with Roy that we don't have that capability as well as we'd like. So that's pretty crucial in order to keep sections. Correct me if I'm wrong here. In order to keep sections, if you have one section go down, if you can't connect to it some way, you're
with the storm. You pretty much had to run one feeder at a time because you can't. In Moorhead, we can break this piece out and come in like that. You guys really can't do that here.
Our options are very limited, so it's concerning.
Question back here?
Yeah, on these older sections, the lines that are up and above and everything, a lot of those lines have trees growing through them and everything, and power lines, and then they have the old I think it's Nordak was the power line that did it before. They have the old transformers up on the pole that, like you said, they're not really coated on any of the wires, and there's a lot of wires up there that are broken off and just hanging. I don't see what he was doing on some of these poles. And then you're talking about an underground line to replace these, right? With all the root systems and everything underneath the trees and everything, that would become a portion of the problem, unless you basically get rid of all the trees.
No, we can sell the power lines around the trees.
Yeah, but you got all these trees in different settings, The power line's gonna be going like a snake.
We can get under pretty good, actually.
You can bore through all that stuff,
Yeah.
so that's not a concern, the boring through.
Right. Yep, no,
You get that?
we're able to do.
Most of the
construction
tree
techniques we
roots,
have.
most of the roots on the trees are not that deep. And you go in at 4 feet with your electrical underneath, as long as you're not boring dead center under that tree with the taproot, you're okay.
No, like I said, in Nordak, I'm looking at the map, my home's in where all that red portion is, and, looking at the last storm that pulled down a tree, 35, 45, 40-foot tree and everything, knocked on the lines and everything, but luckily it didn't break them. I've had Midco out because Midco runs their lines up on the power line there, and they're sending out more people to repair the brackets that broke off from that last storm we had that, on the 20th, of this month. And he said, looking up at the transformer, it's just really, there's wires hanging that he doesn't know what they're even doing there because they're just dangling, in the system.
If it's just dangling, more than likely, they might be de-energized then, because,
For what?
I said, if it's probably just dangling, it might be de-energized.
That
Because otherwise it'd be
transformer?
arcing,
That transformer on the pole?
maybe,
Okay.
it could be, I don't know exactly where, but it sounds to me like if there's any kind of dangling wires around there.
Well, there's also wires cut down near the bottom of the pole.
Why don't you talk about it after the meeting with Roy, and he can help you with that.
Good question. Okay, so let's talk about improvements to the system. So basically, what we did is, knowing those vulnerabilities and problems on the system, we came up with a plan to basically take care of them. And we tried to prioritize what we felt were the most important things to be done first. If we could wave a wand and do all of them at once, we'd love to do that, but we realize that's not realistic. So we've broken this out into 4 different phases of work, and so you can take off in chunks, basically. So this first phase here, we want to get started with the voltage conversion on the east side of the community. The clouded areas there are the areas that we'd be looking to upgrade from 4.16 kV to 12.5 kV out on the distribution system. We'll have to make some improvements at the trail substation as well. We'll install what's called a step-up transformer there to allow you to start serving those circuits at 12.5 kV. And then we're also going to build a new circuit out to the water treatment plant because we know there's going to be a large load coming on out there. And we want to build that one at 12.5 kV as well. So we'll have to put a step-up transformer in on the west side of the interstate somewhere. The cost for phase 1 adds up to about $5.6 million. That mainline project, about $800,000, about 2.7 for southeast voltage conversion, and about 2.1 million for northeast voltage conversion. These numbers are intended to be budgetary. They do include all materials, assumed contractor installed labor, as well as include, as if you'd be fully engineering the project, hiring contractors to build it, and do include contingencies as well. So they're going to be budgetary type figures. And they are today's value. Obviously, as inflation occurs over the next several years, we did not account for potential inflation in these values. We're presently showing phase 1 being completed 2026 to 2028. Okay, so there. Sorry about that. Okay, phase 2. Phase 2 is shown in green on this map. So phase 1 was red, phase 2 is green. This one's a little harder to see because it blends into the background. But in phase 2, we're showing a new substation being constructed. This one would be rated just 12.5 kV on the low side. We're showing it kind of in the southwest corner, just east of the interstate. It doesn't have to be in that exact location necessarily. We'd like it to be close to the transmission line if we can, because we then don't have to build transmission to that substation. That's just another added cost. We've talked about building on the west side of the interstate possibly, which we could do, but then we'd have to build a tap across the interstate transmission. In addition, we're showing the downtown area getting converted from 4.16 kV to 12.5 kV in this phase also. That substation, about a $5 million project. The downtown voltage conversion, about 2.3 million. And then we had some ties as part of this project as well to improve that sectionalizing on the system. Total of phase 2 is about 7.7 million. And we're showing that in 2029 to 2031. Any questions so far?
So with that substation, if we lost the other sub, we would be able to run the town on that, depending on the growth.
We would build that large enough to handle the full capacity of your community. Yes. Good question. Okay, phase 3, and this is
As you do the expansion then, are you also planning on putting all the overhead underground? Or
yes. So every time that we are doing one of those clouds, we're burying those lines. So as we're converting voltage, we're not going to go back in the air with overhead transformers. We're going to put in pad mount transformers and basically convert those overhead power lines to underground. That's the cost that we've included in the budgetary figures here. Good question. So phase 3 is shown in blue on this one. Again, we're continuing with more voltage conversion. This time on the west side of the interstate, we're going to convert the rest of that area to 12.5. We're going to take that step-up transformer that was on the west side of the interstate and actually move it to the trail substation. We're going to repurpose that to be able to run generation, because your generators are at 4.16 kV. So when we convert trail to 12.5, we've got to be able to still connect to those generators. We're also doing more voltage conversion on the east side of the interstate as well. Basically in those clouded areas in light blue there. Phase 3, about 1.8 million of voltage conversion. I didn't mention we're also building a new circuit, new mainline circuit out to the water treatment plant area to get a backup 12.5 circuit for that part of the system. Expectation is we're going to be getting more load in the industrial park, during these times as well. So that mainline water treatment plant tie, about 500,000, and then the northeast voltage conversion about 3.85 million for a total phase 3 of 6.16 million.
Chad, in layman's term, how do you describe that conversion? What are you doing on that conversion? Of course, you're changing the voltage.
Yep.
But what's the advantage and the disadvantage? What's the advantages, of course, to that?
Yeah, so the big advantage is that for the same amount of power that we're sending to a customer, it takes 1/3 of the current on the line. Okay, so if before it was using 100 amps, now I only need 33 amps.
I think that's important for you guys. That's the first thing question I had was how is that going to make a difference if you have the same lines? And from a layman, it's like, okay, well, that makes sense.
Yep. So a lot of the power cable on your system, we can actually reuse. It doesn't mean we have to replace all the cable on your system. If 15 kV cable is installed, which most of it is, the underground, we can reuse that cable. It's the transformers that we have to replace. And if there's existing service lines that are underground and that are in good shape, we can reuse those as well. So a lot of that cost is just in the transformers, the distribution transformers at the facilities.
Did we look at when we're going underground, because a lot of these homes still have overhead, are we going to keep those overhead, or would those plan to go underground as well?
So we've budgeted to bury those services.
Okay.
It can kind of become I don't know what your policy is for that, on who owns the service and that type of thing, but what we found is when communities do voltage conversion, the best way to do it is just to bury all those services, and the community usually takes care of that. And then even if they do own the service, you turn it over to them at that point. That way, it just all gets done. It all gets done at the same time.
Great. I just want to make sure that was planned in, so we're not.
Yep, it is.
Because I'd hate to see the homeowner have the increase in rates and then have to pay that expense.
Right. So yeah, this includes getting everything to the meter buried.
You will want to be cautious of that, because if you have to, when you go and swap out or put the service underground, there is a chance that they're going to have to go into the panel, potentially. If they do, then the customer is going to have to pay to upgrade their panel inside their house. So cautious of that. That's one of the things we noticed in Moorhead.
Which, is it?
The electrical panel, like if
Right,
you've
but-
got fuse panels on the inside of the house, you might have to go to breakers.
So anybody that has fuses is probably the.
Potentially.
Potentially.
Well, it depends on the meter socket too.
Yeah.
Because if you run 4/0 to a 100 amp meter socket, that socket's not gonna work. So it's more, potentially more than just clipping the wire off and plugging it into the bottom.
So we'd have to evaluate if anybody had 100 amp service panels, they would have to be upgraded.
There's the one job we did for you guys recently had 100 amp, but I've been Langaneering long enough that we hook it up without affecting the meter socket. You run a second pipe up, connect it, come back down into the meter socket.
Yeah. Well, good thing I upgraded 200 a couple years ago.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm guessing all of our older homes probably that were built in the 50s. So that first section, that's something we'll have to get into and look at.
There'll be hundreds or maybe even 60 amp services.
But we could build that into the rates as well to help, or come up with a program. I don't want to say the rates because that'll affect that, but
Yeah.
we can figure out something. Okay.
Okay. And then phase 4, the last phase, basically at the trail substation, we would make the switch from 4.16 kV to 12.5 kV on that substation transformer. We're also showing, and at that point, the old Hillsboro substation can be decommissioned and go away. We're also showing another mainline circuit in the industrial park area if load growth happens. So that one's kind of an if. If that industrial park fills up and you need more capacity there, that's what we're showing that circuit for.
Is there at any point we're upgrading the trail sub so that if the new sub went down, it's backfeed for the whole system?
Yeah, so that is one thing I didn't mention. We can add cooling fans to that transformer at the trail sub and get its capacity up some. But we still wouldn't quite be at full capacity. We can get it up to 7 MVA, so you'd have to rely on some generation, I guess, if you lost the new transformer, if you're at 10 megawatts, let's say.
So if because one of the comes into play is that we're looking at adding 2 more generators on through a loan program.
Okay.
Would that be better to put them at that substation so that you could get it by, or is it better to put it on the other one?
I tend to say the new one would be better.
And that's partially because you're going to do a lot to get everything so you can connect
Yes.
if one section goes down.
Yes.
So you have that
And it will be at
capability.
12.5 right away as well, so that we can more easily get it to your customers.
Less distance to get from one end of town to the other. If you put them both way on that end, by the time it gets to the water plant. So if you put it over at the new end, that gen set could take this gen set takes that.
I was thinking just on the side of if we lost the new sub for whatever reason,
Same thing.
you'd still be able to generate it back through to.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. So phase 4 totals up about $1 million, and yeah, by the time all said and done, we're at about just over 20 million between the 4 different phases. Additional questions? Comments? Discussion?
Just a curiosity question. Can you ever take open loop and make it closed loop? Or once it's already in, it's in?
Oh, you can. So we're talking about like on the transmission system. You can. It does take quite a bit of investment to make that happen. That would kind of be on Excel as the owner of the transmission system. To do that. Moorhead as opposed to the transmission system. Correct.
But they own.
Okay, that's all I have. Thanks for your time.
Chad, appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes, thank you,
And if there's
Ted.
additional questions or what have you, happy to reach out to us anytime. I'm happy to.
I have one question, Chad.
Yeah.
If we do nothing, how long before something happens?
Tomorrow?
Last week.
If you didn't hear Eric, he said tomorrow.
You're at the end. You know, I mean, you do something or you fade into the abyss. If these loads do come to town, you're not gonna be able to serve them, and other people will serve them, and you'll lose that electric load. That's where you're at.
And if you can't read he's the electric operations manager at Moorhead, so that's why he's been up helping us and Roy a lot. So he's been around the system now for a while here. So he's seen a lot of it. He's worked a lot with Roy. So the short time he's been here, he's got to experience a lot of things. So I take his when he says something to heart, because like I said, these guys he's been there. He's thinking about retiring in about 10 years. So
10 years?
Thanks, Paul, I appreciate that.
You're welcome. Anytime
I started in Benson, Minnesota, and it was very similar to where you guys are now. And they were not doing a lot of investing into it. MRES, after I left, ended up coming in, taking it over, and has invested in that community, and it has done wonders for that community down there. Had they not done the upgrades and stuff, they would not have the load that they have now. So.
And this is not unique to Hillsboro, this conversion. This
is not unique to you at all.
We may even be behind them.
You might be on the tail end, put it that way.
Of communities that have already done it.
Your size. We've done lots of voltage conversion. Benson was longer involved with it as well. So this is a process. This is a normal process to go through. It's just that you maybe let it slip a little longer than some of the communities have. Put it that way. And I don't want to curse your system, so don't hold that against me. But I've seen a lot of 30 to 40-year-old transformers fail in my time. So that's what could happen, and then you'd really be in a tough spot. A new transformer to order today, it takes 3.5 years to get.
That's for a substation
For a
transformer.
substation transformer. You might be able to find something on the used market. Maybe. So, again, I don't want anything bad to happen, but that could happen.
Just an example of how fast the load can go up. There's a company here that recently approached us and they wanted to add 3/4 of a meg to their system, like right now. So it's like, I had to call these guys to see where we're at on their model, because that's going on at the same time as the new water plant is trying to come in at the same time. Those are the things the kind of issues and problems that we're running into. Because they're not just coming in, they're using up a lot of load, so we have to be prepared to be able to service them, what they need. So with the water plant coming in at the same time, and then Anchor asking for what they're looking for at the same time, it's one of those things where we really have to, otherwise, you know, we have to start telling them no. And that's not gonna go well.
And with that being said, me being on the economic development side so long in Hillsboro, that's another thing that concerns me, is because if that company comes in and they need X amount of electricity and we can't supply it, they're gonna say, well, it was nice talking to you, we're gonna go to Castleton, or we're gonna go to Mayville, or, you know, so those are things that we also, those are other things besides the urgency of it, those are other things that can prevent the growth of the city. And as everyone knows, the more people, more utility customers we have, the less everybody has to pay, because you're splitting that piece of pie amongst a lot of people. So we hate to say, no, don't come here. So that's something to also keep in mind, is that you stifle economic growth at the same time if you don't have the capacity, so.
Yeah, I visited with MRES this afternoon a little bit, talking both transmission and substation, and distribution. You've used your, there's not a lot of capacity left in your system, and Chad noted that earlier tonight. You gotta have some buffer in there so that you can say yes to economic development or a customer wanting to add load. And if you don't, like Eric said, they're gonna go somewhere else. And the distribution system doesn't have the capacity either. So you've got to do something to help continue forward with growing Hillsboro.
We're kind of getting hit from three different sides almost. We're trying to grow, you know, or from an economic development standpoint, but we're also trying to take care of what we have.
Yeah.
Let's say you had 5 people that wanted to put charging stations in their house. You just saw what Chad did, you know, and Eric, you know, that's possibilities, you know, you never know what's going to happen. So we're already at that point where, you know, we have to say no to those things, and we don't want to say no to those things. So, but they're a reality that we have to deal with.
Well, we've already said no to a few. We've had asks, and the big one that'll come, potentially coming. I mean, would this system give us enough for a cheese plant in the future? The new system?
How many things are we talking?
I don't know.
I mean, if we can plan for that, we can build a new substation for that, sure.
And that's
And
in
maybe
the
we put a
industrial
second-
park.
Right, and maybe we put a second transformer in right away, if that's gonna happen, for example. Let's say it's a 5 or 10 megawatt load, then
But
we're
that-
gonna approach that project differently.
Because like if we wanted another Dagelman's, or we want another Anchor, we can't.
Right now, you have no chance.
No.
You have no chance.
Yeah, there's nothing there.
And I know other places that will build the sub for them and supply the power to them, and you will not be the one supplying the power and getting the electric revenue from that. You will lose your electric revenue to someone else.
Yeah, and if we were to build a new sub, we would build it with space to expand it as well, right off the bat. You know, you put room in for that second transfer right away. So if something big happens in the community, you can get it.
And remember, this isn't happening tomorrow. We do have, you know, if something comes up in the next year or two, we still have, that's phase 2. So
Right.
we can adjust as we need, you know, in the next few years here, so.
Yeah, I think Chad's game plan is to fix the existing system and add some feeders as needed. But at the end of the day, if something comes to town, yeah, you're gonna have to flip-flop everything and just to get that load online.
And they did the best, but that's when they asked the question about, you know, we don't know when a school is gonna happen, we don't know what other things, but the potential is there, so they're trying to build that in right away. And the development, you know, over there on the industrial side there, you know, they built that in because those are areas that we've heard people talking about potential growth. So we built those in right away, so.
Anybody have any other questions? Nicole? Jason?
I'm good.
John?
Good.
Nicole? For now. Okay. Thank you, Chad, and for all the work that you guys did for helping us put this together and seeing this definitely fits into our improvement
for the whole community.
And this is really good stuff.
Okay, yeah, you're welcome,
It's-
appreciate the opportunity.
Okay.
Thank you.
Next, I'll turn it over to Tim Miller with MREF to talk about our rates.
Good.
I just gotta switch it.
And for those who don't know, Jim, he's the director of rates at Missouri River Energy Services. This is what he does for a living, and he again is at the top of his game, so he knows numbers. So if you have any questions, if he can't answer them, probably nobody can answer them. So.
I'll do my best. Ironically, I was in Benson 2 weeks ago, and he said that. It was interesting. They're probably approving their rates right now, but it's good to be here in Hillsboro, and she's just pulling up my slides here, and then we'll get rolling. Our last study was in 2007. That's the first study we did for Hillsboro, so it's been a while. We've been in contact with past staff with various questions. I talk to Jim every couple of years about various things, but obviously haven't been able to get back up here for a study till now, so we really appreciate being up here, and obviously the need is there with some of the improvements that you're doing, so I want to make sure you get paid for that as well. So she'll get that up. We are proposing 9% increases overall over the next 5 years. You know, I'll have to admit, obviously we're looking at some big numbers here, there's no doubt about it, but what we tried to do in the study is really break it into segments. Instead of saying, okay, we're going to do this all at once, I don't think you have to do it all at once. What we try to do is break it up into pieces and do some regular increases over the next 5 years to hopefully get to the point where you need to be. So I certainly could have made an argument for a larger increase in year 1 and year 2 just because of the magnitude of what you're looking at, but felt that maybe 9% is appropriate, again, to break this up into segments over those 5 years. Another thing I want to mention is that not every customer is going to get exactly 9%. So one of the things we try to do in a rate study is to balance out the rate components and make sure that they reflect the cost of service. So you'll see that in the study that certain customers will pay a little more, a little less than that. We'll get into some of those details, but wanted to mention that as well. There we go. I don't know if you can, probably as large as you can be. You've got this in your packet, so if you want to follow along as well. That's good. One point of emphasis is fixed cost recovery. So we're going to look at customer charges going up, hopefully, and then demand rates, which is a new element that we're going to look at as well in the rate study. So that's one of the topics that staff wanted to look at. Most of our members do have demand rates. Up till now, Hillsboro does not have them, but certainly you've added some very large loads here in recent years, and so it really necessitates looking at that as well. As far as reasons for the increase, certainly purchase power is a big part of it. You've seen WAPA go up the last few years because of drought and then O&M cost increases. MRES is looking at increases as well. We'll get into that in a minute. That's something you're not controlling locally, you're just passing that along to your customers. So we need to, that's kind of a starting point in terms of these increases. Inflation, that's really hitting everyone. Obviously, that's slowing down a little bit recently, but those are costs that you have to recover as well. Obviously, the big one is the capital projects. I think 3 reasons for that Chad kind of touched on. Reliability is a big one, getting those lines underground, making sure that they're can be counted on to serve you after a storm and so on. Economic development, again, being able to serve those loads. And then the other aspect is actually cost savings. So I think one thing we can count on is that this will probably reduce your line losses. So in other words, you compare what you buy at the substations to what your customers use, and there's some thermal losses and other things going on in the system. We're hoping those line losses are reduced, and for each 1% that those are reduced, I'm looking at about $30,000 a year in cost savings. So those are real operational savings as well that you should be able to see as a result of these improvements. So that's a big deal as well. At the same time we're doing all this, we want to make sure you've got adequate cash reserves, especially since you've got these 3 or 4 phases going on. We want to save some money so that down the road you can pay perhaps a little bit of that debt down, so you don't have to issue 100% of the debt. So that's another important aspect. It's also very important when you go to the banks and financing authorities, you got to show them you have a plan to have some rate increases, that you've got some cash in the bank. And so that's very important to demonstrate that to them as well, that you've got a plan to have these reserves in place. We are seeing, right now you have pretty competitive rates actually. Over time, obviously that's going to change a little bit, but we're seeing, most utilities are increasing rates. MRES is 61 members. We've tracked the average, and for those members, nearly all of them increased rates this year, and the average was 5%. So really the baseline is not 0. We kind of knew you had to have some kind of increase. Obviously the project adds to that increase, but for various reasons, again, nearly all of our members are going up this year, and they're going to go up in future years as well. So,
Can I add to that a little
Yeah,
bit?
yeah, you bet.
Cass County Electric Minn Kota, I think had an 8.3% rate increase that I think went into effect 2025. That was for purchase power, and so the co-ops then tied to Minn Kota pass that along to their customers. So theirs is going up. I think XL North Dakota asked for 20%, and I think they got a 12.3 interim rate increase. And I think XL Minnesota was 8 or 9% increase. So what Tim's talking about isn't out of order with what you're seeing going on in the industry.
this one you might have to zoom out just a little bit. We'll get kind of the bottom end of it. You can even go, there we go, yeah, again, the numbers are kind of small at the bottom, but what we're trying to show, this is going back 40 years to 1985, and so a couple of things I want to point out here. The orange pieces of the bars are what WAPA supplies, and then the kind of maroon on top is what MRES supplies. So you can see up till about 2000, you're at about 30% MRES, 70% WAPA. You've had some tremendous growth from 2000 to 2022, about 60% load growth. So you've seen some really great things here in the community. A few key customers have expanded and located here. Again, what you're trying to do is keep that going, but again, as you've heard, you need to expand your system and improve it so that you can keep this growth going. We've been a little bit more modest in our growth assumptions for the study just because it's more of a financial study. We certainly are aware of some of these additional loads, and over time, if you indeed get these loads, we can adjust this forecast. But again, we wanted to be a little bit more modest and kind of look at the known loads that are in place now and kind of model that going forward. So again, MRES stands ready to supply that growth to you from a power supply perspective, and that's really the role that we play in helping your community to grow as well. So. Next slide there. Just breakdown of the power usage. On the left is the energy kilowatt hours. You can see the residential is about 41%. Our member median is 42%, so you're right at the norm in terms of what we're seeing. Obviously, a good share of the dual heat is also residential, though, so you're probably closer to 50% on the residential side, and that's probably no surprise here in the community. The yellow piece on the left, which is 34%, is large commercial. That is a new proposed class that we're looking at, and I've indicated that's over 50 kilowatts. Just to give you an idea of what that means is that that'd be the size of a convenience store. We've got a couple of those in town. The courthouse, a couple of the larger churches are right around that average of 50 kilowatts. So that's kind of the threshold. Anyone larger than that would be in this new proposed class, and they would get a demand rate. Again, we'll explain what that means here in a little bit, but that would be the large commercial class. Those customers would only make up about 24 meters, 24 customers. So they're only 2% of the meters, but they're about a third of the usage. So we really spent a lot of time looking at that data, going over that with staff to make sure we kind of knew what the impacts would be on those customers, because they are indeed some very key customers, and we want to make sure we're charging them correctly for what they're using for power. The next slide. So moving into our cost breakdown then, you can see looking forward, 56% of your costs are, again, purchase power and transmission, WAPA, MRES, and Excel. Those are the three that you're paying for that, all in terms of rates that are set outside of your control. Our member average is right around 55 to 60%, so you're pretty much the norm there in terms of that piece of pie. Salaries and benefits are 9, and other operating expenses are 5. Those are, again, pretty much the norm. Obviously, the big piece there is the debt service and capital expenditure. So that's all the projects that Chad just talked about, making up nearly a third of your costs in the future. So that's, again, what we're ramping up rates to pay for, as well as those purchase power increases that we're seeing as well. So next slide. Just a quick rundown on some power supply increases just to kind of demonstrate what's going on. Again, WAPA's had the increases in 23, 25, and 26. So those are kind of in place now. The last one is going on next year, and they've confirmed that now that will take place. So they're seeing various cost pressures. Hopefully we're at the end of the line in terms of their needs, but we never know. Again, the drought is a never-ending fear for WAPA, is that any given year, if it starts to dry out in the Missouri River Basin, they're going to see an impact pretty quickly. So hopefully we're okay, but again, we never know from year to year. MRES is looking at a lot of good projects, both generation and transmission. We need new facilities to serve members, but again, that comes at a price tag too. And we are also trying to segment and break that up into pieces. So we're looking at hopefully manageable 5% increases. The board's been looking at that recently, and so certainly taking a close look. And that's the benefit of MRES. You've got people like Travis sitting on the board, representing all the members, making sure that MRES is doing the right thing for you as well. So. Excel is going up. We're estimating 3% increases. So those are all the things reflected in the study. We did have a couple of refunds back a few years ago based on because of COVID, and also some transmission refunds. So those monies flowed back to Hillsboro in that amount of 175. Couple quick notes on our rate design. We implemented seasonal demand rates actually back in 2011. So our demand rates are higher in the summer. That's when we see the higher power costs. That's when we plan for those peaks. So they're higher in the summer and they're lower in the winter. That is something we're actually proposing now for Hillsboro. So again, we'll talk about that here in a minute. The other piece that we implemented just a couple of years ago was time of use rates. If you go to the next slide, you'll see an example of what our rates are in the summer. So what we saw is that our loads are highest in the summer from 12 to 8. That's when our members are using the most power during the day. That's also when the market prices get elevated. So as you can imagine, there's less capacity, generation capacity available, prices go up. And so we wanted to be a little more transparent and reflect that in the rates that we charge our members. It also gives them the opportunity to shift load to those off-peak hours. And you've had a dual fuel rate here for a while. That's the whole premise that you go off of too, is to kind of control the loads during those high cost hours and hopefully let them use more power in the off-peak hours. So that's really what we're doing with rates. We're not necessarily proposing that you implement this now for Hillsboro. I think that's somewhere down the road once you get the new billing system in place and kind of get some of these rate increases. But just want to kind of give you a heads up that this is kind of the future of rate design and that our members are going to start looking at this kind of over time. So,
Tim, did you see in the past where we weren't covering our expenditures on income when we had these high demands?
That's a good way to answer. I think it would be better if you had a demand rate so that those customers that were driving up the demands were paying their share of those costs. I think
I guess
that's
it's
what
a
it's
shame that we're our revenues aren't covering our expenditures during the summer months, but we're making up.
Yes, exactly. Yes, that's true. Yep, because you didn't have seasonal rates. Yeah, your rate should reflect those higher costs in the summer for sure. Yeah.
So we're losing money in the summer months.
Yes.
And making it up in the winter.
Yep, to some extent. And on an annual basis, you're still okay, so you don't see it. But yeah, on a monthly basis, definitely that's true. Yep.
Could you look at that as like a graph, as, okay, we're paying here and then we go up and we go down? Shouldn't that be what the customers,
Yeah.
Shouldn't that kind of follow that? That's how I look at it. So if we're paying more, they're in the on-peak, and if we're paying less, they're...
Yeah, I mean, there's two elements. There's the seasonal demand rates, which is kind of the rate you play for the demand in that month. And then there's this aspect, which is time of use, which is down the road, we'll kind of collect those costs. But right now, we do want to collect those seasonal demand costs with higher rates. And you'll see those rates here in a couple of minutes. So these are your power costs. If you kind of, yeah, there we go. You kind of peaked there a few years back when WAP and MRES had some increases, and then your costs have decreased to about 5.4 cents here the last few years, but you can see in the future years, you are going to see a steady increase in those purchase power costs. Again, MRES has very competitive rates. WAPA has extremely competitive rates, but they are going up just to reflect the generation facilities we're trying to look at and just all the factors going on. So, these are going up over time. We're competitive, but as Travis indicated, all the wholesale suppliers are going up at the same time. So, all right, we've kind of covered these already. These are the amounts from the DGR study that you just saw. So those are just for your reference if you want to keep going here. The next slide, though, is the financing. And so talking with staff, we kind of talked this through of how this might look. We're thinking phase one might be a Bank of North Dakota loan. The good news with that is that we're able to spread that out over 30 years and the interest rate is lower. So that's really a good financing source. We have included a debt service reserve. So basically they often require you to set 1 year principal and interest aside, and the savings is kind of a restricted account. That's for your protection really and theirs, so that if something catastrophic happens, there's that 1 year payment sitting there that you can use if you need to. The annual debt service would be $263, and this does not include that potential grant. I understand you might be finding out about that soon.
End of the month.
End of the month. So we just decided to kind of move ahead with the study. I think if that grant does occur, what you're going to be able to do obviously is issue less debt now, and then you have more capacity for debt going forward. So I don't think it necessarily affects the rate plan. You would just be further ahead on your financials if that occurs. So let's hope that that occurs, but that's one of many things that can happen with this plan. We're kind of doing the best we can. We know there's going to be changes. We know that things will evolve, but we're always ready to help if those changes occur. But
So you're saying if we did get the grant, we should be, whether it's 30% or 40% of our revenue should be going aside to pay for this plus reserves for the future.
Definitely, still set aside those revenues to pay for it, yeah. In essence, what would occur if you get the grant is you'd probably have about $500,000 more cash by the end of 2030, just because your debt service on phase one would be lower.
Right.
So then you could use that extra amount to put a bigger down payment on phase two. So that's essentially what could happen.
Right.
So either way, the money's going to be used, it's just that you'd be able to use it on phase two instead
And
of
not
phase
pay
one.
as much on the interest.
Yes.
Paying
Yeah.
more on the principal.
Hey, Tim, just to clarify, our generation revenue is included in these numbers too, right?
It is included in your revenues, yep, and you'll see that here in just a minute, yep, that is in there, so. Phase two, we did assume, you'll see in the projections that we think you're gonna be able to use $1 million of cash reserves at that point to pay a part of that, plus if you get the grant, you might pay even more, so that'd be good news too. We'll see how everything happens, but I think that would be good news, again, to not have to bond for everything in that phase. We have assumed traditional bonding here. I understand you might have some more Bank of North Dakota borrowing authority by that point. We didn't want to assume that. If you do have more under that program, the debt service would be lower. But we have assumed the traditional bonding. Again, we don't know what interest rates are going to be. Again, a lot of unknowns here, but we're trying to do our best in these assumptions. But that would be an additional amount that would be in debt service. And then other thing we wanted to mention when we looked at net income is this debt service coverage ratio. We want to have enough income to pay at least 125% of your principal and interest. Again, that's a good financial metric. You'd love to see even higher, and actually you will be higher than that. But just to kind of keep that in mind, that not only do you want some cash reserves, but you want a steady income stream to make sure you can pay that debt going forward. And stop me again if you have any questions. I'll kind of keep moving through this. But next page. So these are just the cost changes that you're seeing. Charges for services is your billed revenues. That would go up because of the rate increases and also some load growth. Your other revenues is that generation revenue that was referenced, and that's gone up recently. The MRES payments went up because we're kind of valuing that at greater amounts, so that has gone up over time. Part of that is already captured in that 2023 number, but that would still go up another $30,000 over the next few years. So revenues go up about 69%. Operating costs would go up as well. Obviously, the big number there is the debt service would go up from minimal amount now to substantial amount going forward. So the other key is we have assumed a drop in the transfers. You can see in 2023 you had a very substantial amount going back to city government of 434, and we've dropped that all the way down to 5,000 based on talking with staff. And so I think the key here at electric utilities provided, I think, an essential funding source to city government, but now it might be a good time to kind of pull back on that and really focus on the electric needs, and it looks like that's maybe what you're trying to do, and I think that would be good news, just to kind of rebalance things a little bit so you can make sure you can pay for these important improvements that you're looking at. So the bottom line is that back in 23, when it was all said and done, you really didn't have any cash left over to add to cash reserves. It was really a zero budget, if you will. And that's okay, but what we're trying to focus on in the future is that we know you've got these 4 phases, and we know we need to ramp up that cash flow so that by 2030 you've got that $580,000. So some of that can go to cash reserves, some to go to debt service, but either we need to ramp that up over time so you've got that money available to really plan for the future. So that's really what we're trying to do in that bottom line there.
Tim, on the other operating expenses,
Yeah.
does that include, like, if we needed to buy a new bucket truck or a digger truck?
It wouldn't include that. It's more of your salaries and your routine items that are in your operating budget. If you had any special equipment purchases, not necessarily in that total, but any of the stuff that you routinely budget for.
Is there something that we should be budgeting for that? Because that's where that 5,000 was going, was into a capital improvement or a equipment fund. Like if we needed those, that was one place we were putting aside to try to
Some of that would come out of that 580 in 2030, so that
Okay.
additional cash flow, you could take some of that. So if you had an equipment purchase, you just wouldn't add reserves in that year. You would make that purchase then, so.
Because we were trying to build up those funds so that
Sure.
if we're not taking out another loan so that we can
Yeah, no, that makes
service
sense.
this debt, because this debt's gonna be more important than buying a new payloader or buying a new, if we can have that $200,000 on hand to pay for a payloader or a new bucket truck or
Yep.
those things that we need.
Sure, no, that makes sense. And like I said, we are trying to ramp up cash flows for things like that that might occur that we don't know right now, but we might need in the future, so. So then this is the net income, historical and projected. You can see the red bars are under current rates, both past results and going forward. You can see in past years you had really minimal income or net losses were kind of the norm. This is after transfers, so certainly your operating income was better than this, but this is kind of the net income that you see in the audit statements. And you can see, especially by 2030 with the new debt service, you'd really drop off into a significant net loss position. We're not saying you're going to let this happen. We just wanted to model this just to show you, okay, this is really the need for the rate increases. The blue bars then are what would happen under the proposed rates with the 9% increases. So you can see some very healthy income. It looks like some huge numbers. I would admit you're getting up to $1 million of income, but again, you've got significant debt service that income is going to cover. So that's really the purpose of that, and to have some amounts left over for cash reserves. So that's really the two reasons why income is showing up is much more significant than in the past. On the cash reserve side of things, red line there again is under current rates. So you do okay for the next few years, but you can see towards the end, if you don't raise rates, you drop off to a deficit position by 2030. So again, that's very much what you want to avoid. We're trying to plan ahead to have more cash reserves. The blue line would indicate what would happen if you do the increases, and you can see that kind of dip in that last year. That's where we assumed about $1 million would be taken from reserves and cash flows in that year to have a small debt down payment on that debt service. So whether you do exactly $1 million, that's something you can decide here in a few years. We're just trying to model what this might look like so you can have that option available if you need to pay down that debt a little bit. You've also had some amounts due to electric, so you borrowed, and I don't remember exactly which funds that was borrowed to, but you can see in the historical lines there, those yellow pieces of the bars were the amounts that were due from electric. So, you know, like I said, in 2022, the electric cash actually dropped, but you had a greater amount due. So really, if you add the two together, cash has been relatively stable for electric. And once those are repaid, you kind of go forward with the amounts you see there in blue. So just wanted to point that out, that it might look like cash was dropping for electric, but really it was just being borrowed temporarily to fund something else and then kind of get repaid. So,
And that could be our own electric that we're not paying for, so on and so forth.
What's that?
Could be this building we don't pay for.
Oh.
We're not paying the electric fund for this electric, it just comes out of electric.
Oh, sure. Yeah,
So it could be that.
Yeah, it could be some of that, yeah.
Which the big would be our water treatment plant use.
Or money that was transferred to? Or money that was
I think there was actually a receivable on the books. I think some other city fund was actually short and there was a receivable set up, and I think that's been paid down. I should have looked at which fund that was, but we could, yeah. But again, it's more past. I think it's been mostly repaid. I just wanted to point that out, that the cash was drawn down for that, so. This next slide then, so we track the cash reserves of about 90 area utilities. Most of them are MRES members, but there's some other utilities as well. So that's the red line there, and that's your historical results. The orange line is the median of those other utilities, and so what we're looking at is cash as a ratio of revenues. What's that percentage? And you can see we're up to about 77% is the median for those other utilities. Hillsboro's been tracking pretty well. You've been a little bit below the median in red there, but not too far off. Under current rates, again in red, you would drop way off. But under blue rates, actually, you get up near the median here in the last few years. So again, that's another real goal, is to make sure you have strong reserves. When you go out and bond, they want to see some strong reserves as well. You know, Moorhead's done this, other utilities has done this as well. So it's a very important feature of this. And really with the 9% increases, you're getting a lot of benefit out of that in terms of building these cash reserves to prepare for the future. So again, another good aspect of these, these increases. These are some definitions for your reference. Won't go into these in detail, but we talk about peak demand energy. So again, demand is the maximum rate of power delivery. So it's taking kind of snapshots of how much power is delivered at any one time. And energy is just the summation of usage over time. So I've got some analogies there with car driving. Load factor is another key element in terms of looking at average demand divided by peak demand. What this is really driving towards, we'll talk about in a minute, is these proposed demand rates. It costs Hillsboro less to serve a high load factor customer. So in other words, a customer with very steady power usage throughout the month, it costs you less to buy power to serve them. And so we're trying to reflect that in your retail rates so that customers, again, pay the correct amount for power. So that's really what all of this is trying to illustrate, that we're actually passing through those costs accurately to the customers in terms of how they use power. That's a lot to kind of digest, but that's kind of what we're doing with this. And again, talk with staff a little bit about it and kind of look at the impacts by various customers. So, single and three-phase, you don't break out your rates in this way, but basically most customers are served single-phase, which is one voltage source. The larger ones need three-phase to more efficiently deliver power to them. So just kind of noting, if you see those terms out there, that's what those mean as well. Then breaking down the cost of service. So we do a kind of a detailed look at all the costs of providing service, and you can see that over half your costs are demand costs. So again, that's some of the things that Chad talked about: generation stations, transmission lines that you pay for through Excel, all the substations. Those are all really considered demand related, and that's by far the most significant part of providing electric service. 26% energy, that's variable costs. 19% is facilities, so that's transformers serving customers. And then the remaining 2% is really the small amount for billing and metering. So that kind of breaks those out. So this is kind of important of rate design. What we're looking at doing, if you look at, there's three major customer classes, there's three major cost types. And currently you've only got really two rate types. You've got a customer charge that everyone pays, and then an energy rate. What we're proposing to do for large commercial customers is break this out into a three-part rate. So we're taking those very significant demand costs and putting them in a separate charge. So I think the important thing to look at here is that all customers are still going to be paying demand-related costs. It's just that they're going to be split out for large commercials into a separate charge. So it's more transparent and more accurate for how they pay for power. So when we look at the costs of providing service, we compare those to revenues, do a bunch of allocations. This is what we came up with in terms of the impacts by customer class. You can see overall there's a 54% increase over 5 years. Residential and large commercial are right at that level. Small commercial customers are seeing a bigger percentage increase based on cost of service. And I think you'll see that showing up in the rate comparisons as well. And then dual heat had a pretty significant increase a couple of years ago, and we're showing only a 13% increase for them. So this is kind of the guideline we use for proposed rates. We don't follow this exactly, but this is kind of the benchmark we use to kind of say, okay, how should we allocate these rate increases to the customers? As far as proposed percentage increases then, again, we're assuming 9% increases over the next 5 years. Residential should get right around that 9%. So again, they're going to see about that same level overall as the system. Kind of the same for large commercial. They would get just a little bit over 9% per year. Dual heat would only get about 1% per year. And then small commercial right around 10 to 11% per year. So not huge changes, but again, we want to better represent the cost of serving customers in the rates that we're showing. And again, we'll see these rates here in the next few slides. Customer charges, again, very important aspect. There's a lot of fixed costs of providing service. There's some new debt service coming on, and so I think it's more critical than ever to have significant cost recovery in these customer charges to make sure that all customers are paying a share of these fixed costs. And so you can see by 2030, that amount would be $30. You can see a breakdown there of how that would be allocated in terms of billing, the meter system, and the facilities as well. Seasonal rates, we touched on these, and so basically your costs are about 1.2 cents higher in the summer than the other 9 months. And so up till now, you haven't reflected that in the rates. As been pointed out, you're kind of losing some money in the summer. gaining a little more in the winter. Nearly all of our members have implemented seasonal rates at this point. The only ones that haven't, really because of their WAPA structure and so on, they really don't see a significant difference in their cost between summer and winter. But for anyone like Hillsboro that does have a cost difference, they have gone to seasonal rates. And again, this all occurred since the last rate study. The last rate study was in 2007. We didn't have seasonal rates then, so this is something new since then. The silver lining here is that what you add to the summer rates, you take away from the winter. And so the winter rates would be a little more competitive for electric heating customers, those that still have electric heat. So that's always a benefit. We're not doing it necessarily because of that, but that is kind of a side benefit of this as well. So. Demand charges, it's a complicated topic. We've reviewed this with staff. We've come up with a proposal of a threshold of 50 kilowatts. Certainly some utilities have a lower threshold than 50 kilowatts, but we thought that was a good place to start, at least for now. This could be optional for customers over 25. There are some customers that would actually benefit being on the demand rate just because of their load profile. So that could be something down the road you can offer that as an option to them, but that's something you can work through over time. These two are very common in the industry. Nearly all members have that. The only members of ours that don't have demand rates are smaller than Hillsboro, really, and they don't have the size loads that you have. So again, this is something that has evolved since the rate study. You've added a really big customer since then, that they weren't here at that time. So the need for it, I think, is more apparent than it probably was in the past. So there is some different increases that would go on, and so I think one key aspect of this would be to kind of meet with these customers, especially the ones that are going to be impacted a little bit more. Some are going to see a benefit from this, some are going to see a little bit higher costs. In either sense, they're going to be paying more accurately what they should based on the cost of providing service. But it is important to have that education piece just to make sure they're aware of what's going on and why they're paying these costs. We've actually got a flyer that we shared with staff that they can use to kind of do that. This could be delayed. You're currently undergoing a billing system upgrade. After that's done, you're going to need to start bringing these demand readings from the meter system into that billing system and kind of work out the bugs. So that's something that you could hold off on if you needed to, and you could just revert to the small commercial rates. And that conversation could occur over the next few months. It's important, I think, to move ahead with the rate changes either way. This is just one piece of it. It's an important piece, but it could be delayed. The key here is to get the revenues increased to pay for the system costs. I want to emphasize that it's not an all or nothing thing. If this needs to be held off for a little bit, that's okay.
What would be a 25 kilowatt customer about? Like, would it be a hospital? Would it be
25 would be like a Subway. Okay. That would be a good example. Hospitals are much higher usually than that, but yeah, Subway would be a good example. So any of the downtown businesses probably are under 25, but some of the dollar stores are right around that 25, 30, so that would be another one that is in that.
Grocery stores, are they higher?
Grocery stores usually get higher, yep, 60, 70, yep, so. So what we're trying to show here, again, a little bit technical, but the red line is the blue line is the small commercial class in terms of cost per kilowatt hour, and the red line is the large commercial class. And so there is a crossover point of about 40% load factor. And really the bottom line, what we're trying to illustrate here is that just because a customer pays a demand charge, they're not necessarily paying more per kilowatt hour than they would pay if they didn't pay a demand charge. There's a crossover point. Some are better off on that rate, some are not. We would prefer to have most or all customers on the red line because that is what Hillsboro pays for power for serving them. But for logistics and just because of how utilities normally do it, we have a cutoff of either 25 or 50 kilowatts. But just wanted to illustrate this so that in the future, if a customer comes in and says, well, I'm on a demand rate, I'm paying a lot more. Well, maybe, maybe not. Again, it depends upon how they use power. What this allows them to do, though, is to shed demand if they can, spread out demand, spread out usage so that they can lower their demand. It actually gives them more control. Some customers can do that, some can't. But again, they're more aware of the demand they're putting on their system. So, okay, we're on the home stretch. City meters, Levi brought this up. You're one of a few utilities that do not charge for city service. So you have free service to all city meters and street lighting. We actually had a lot more members 20, 25 years ago that were doing this, and we kind of suggested they move to full rates for the city meters. And then if they need to, they can adjust the transfers back out So in other words, if you raise the rates of the water utility and they couldn't handle it all in 1 year, you could then transfer some money back out or account for it. But what we really suggest is having greater transparency by looking at in the future billing for power so that these other utilities see exactly what they're paying in their budgets. Again, most members have done this, not faulting you for not doing it, but it is something that would really enhance what you're doing going forward. Example I've got there, if you have customer A that uses a lot of electricity, but they don't use much water, but then the neighbor uses a lot of water, obviously that electric user is kind of subsidizing that water because those water costs don't include the cost of power and pumping and so on. So under proposed rates, for example, the treatment plant should pay about $92,000 per year under these rates. So that's the amount that really is being covered in the electric rates right now. So, and I understand you've got, another entity using a portion of that treatment plant, so they're also not paying those costs. So it's important to point out that there's some ramifications for not having that charge in place. So. Transfers and free service. So historically, again, you've had some transfers to general funds. I understand some equipment funds as well. Those have been in $325,000 per year, or about 13% of revenues. And that free service is valued at $180 per year, so a total of about 19%. And again, we're not faulting anything that's done. These are all local decisions. Other utilities have high transfers as well. It's a key funding source to the city, so we're certainly not saying you shouldn't be doing these things, but it does have an impact, I think, at times like this when you're looking at trying to fund some very important projects. Both MRES and APPA does a tracking of what the median is again, and again, we're both coming up with about 5% of revenue. So you have been historically quite a bit above that. That's not uncommon for other utilities in this area, but in looking at trying to reallocate those to maybe some other funding sources within the city, I think that is a positive development so that you can pay for some of these projects. Investor owns also pay taxes. Those are coming out about 5% as well.
So with that being said, right now we've been doing a lot of these transfers that in 30 years you would probably be back to have that potential to do that again?
Possibly,
or
yeah.
Whenever you pay off your debt. So
I think once the cash flow is built up, yeah, you probably could go back to doing that.
If you need to. So
Yep.
that's the reason I'm saying that is because now the reality is that that's the good part about having our own power is that when this is paid off, in reality we want to have money set aside so that in 60 years or 30 years, I should say, that this is going to happen again, or you may have to upgrade some. You'll have the reserves there instead of always putting it aside. But if we didn't have that, if we didn't have our own electric, we wouldn't have that capability, whether it be 30, 40, 50 years down. We would never have those reserves for our budget for anything. So.
But I think, Paul, we have to think of it as the smaller city utilities, not our water treatment plants or our sewer lift stations. Those should be paying for themselves out of those rates.
Yeah.
Right.
It should be the shared use type facilities like this building or city hall or the city shop, not
Those rates
not
should,
100 or not 180,000.
Right.
It should be maybe.
well, that would be
80,000.
more. The 180,000 would be more. Whether it be capital projects or something else.
Right.
That you could use.
There's other things.
Not to subsidize other utilities.
And I haven't assumed that you would start billing water. So if you do, and you're able to recover that water rates, that would be to the benefit. We haven't assumed that in the study, so just so
Well,
you know
I think
that.
we've actually, East Central paid for it in our true up because they do put electric in there, but then that money doesn't get reflected back in the electric budget. It stays in the water treatment budget.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so the actual proposed rates then, residential is currently at $20.09. We are suggesting going up $2 a year on the customer charge, up to $30, and then the rates would be broken out by season. We're kind of phasing in the seasonal rates, so a 0.5% margin to begin with, up to about 0.9% over time. So everything we're trying to do is gradual. We're not trying to do anything suddenly or huge steps over time. We're trying to phase all of these changes in over time, but I think these are some positive changes that would really better reflect your costs. Dual heat had a significant increase of 2 cents in 2023, and so we are proposing very small increases to that rate. As you're kind of finishing up this load management upgrade and kind of figuring out how you're going to control loads, if you can control more of the actual dual heat customers along with the water heaters that you're already controlling. You can kind of look at this rate. We can kind of help you to see where you think you want this to go. I will tell you the dual heat rates typically are in the 4.5 to 5.5 cent range, so you are quite a bit above what the norm is. But I know that reflects some uncertainty in terms of how much you're going to be controlling these loads and so on. And that could be a whole other discussion. We probably don't need to get into it this time, but just to summarize that, we're just proposing small increases to that rate going forward for now until we kind of figure out what the best plan is.
What is the norm on those?
4.5 to 5.5 cents is the norm for that. Yeah, like Moorhead's in that range.
So how do they make that work when we're buying power at less than 4.5?
That's all.
Or more than 4.5, I should say.
Yeah, it's because it's more off-peak, so you're controlling it during system peak demands. So you're kind of knowing that, hey, it's February and it's 10 below. We typically peak at 7 megawatts, so we're going to start controlling those loads at 6.5 or whatever you do. So because it's off-peak, they don't pay a demand charge, and your energy part of your bill is in that 4.5 to 5 cent range because you're splitting off the demand and not paying for that. You're not allocating that to these customers because they're off at the system peaks. Hypothetically, that's what the goal is anyway. So that's why you're able to charge a lower rate. But that does require diligent control. I know you've been changing over your load control and kind of hooking up these dual heats. So you kind of need to figure out if you can get all of them hooked up and kind of where you're going with that, and then you can decide if you want to reduce that.
So that could potentially go down.
I think it could, but I didn't want to assume that yet.
Right.
Yeah, so I would say at this rate, it's not going to be very competitive with natural. It's not going to be competitive with natural gas. I'll just say that, and stuff. But it's more competitive with propane and fuel oil, not so much natural gas. So that's kind of something to keep an eye on too. So.
Which we don't need to be competitive at this point because we're at capacity. So.
Yeah, well, that's just it. And that's why, you're not really in a low growth mentality from that standpoint. So yeah.
Because we looked at it, we were losing money on it and not putting in demand charges.
And yeah, if it wasn't being fully controlled, you maybe were. Yeah, I would agree. So yeah, and that's something we'd have to look at more data to kind of see where that's at. Yep. So this is one of several rate comparisons. So this again is small up there, but you can probably see it better in your packet. And I'll probably take my glasses off so I can see it. But we've taken 4 member utilities there. Those happen to be the ones on the left, kind of similar size utilities as Hillsboro. A couple Minn Kota, northern Minnesota utilities, Park River and Grafton. You can see some investor-owned utilities and so on. Hillsboro there you can see in red currently. The median for Hillsboro for residential is 6% higher than Hillsboro. So you're below the median. One thing I want to say right off the bat with these comparisons is that Hillsboro's got a larger share coming from MRES than the 4 members that are below you. The reason for that is they maybe haven't grown as much. They've got a greater share of WAPA that they haven't grown out of. Again, MRES is very competitive rates, but if some of these utilities are 90% WAPA, they're going to naturally have more competitive rates. So what we're not trying to do is just prove that you're the lowest on the chart. What we're trying to do across all the charts is to kind of see what position you are in each chart, to make sure you have some relative stability across the charts in the position you're at. And you're going to see that here in a minute, what I'm talking about. Because again, you may not be the lowest. There's a lot of reasons for that why you might not be, but we want to make sure you're at about the same spot in the chart, wherever that spot might be. So anyway, residential, you're below the median right now. You would go just above it. With the 9% increase. But still really competitive with the investor-owned utilities, certainly with NODAC. NODAC just had an increase, so again, standing pretty well on the residential side of things.
So that would explain why Cavalier doesn't have a high increase because they're using more WAPA power.
Yeah, although they are increasing rate, or looking at increases now, but they're like 90% WAPA. Yeah, they just haven't grown, and so.
And WAPA just had 2 rate increases
in
the last 5 years, 6 years.
Yep, so now they're seeing some cost pressures too.
And that was something that was bought back in the past when WAPA was formed, that they would get allocated X amount.
Yep, and then that's capped, so they can't get any more from WAPA. But WAPA just had increases with 16% and then 14 over 2 years.
Yep.
So their rates have gone up, so they're seeing a significant jump because of WAPA increases, not because of MRES, because there's a small piece of the pie.
WAPA is not going to add any more on.
They're not, but they can do rate increases
to cover their
operating costs as well too. And they can minimum of 5 years, they have to do a rate review, but they can do them every year if they need to. It's a lot longer process than we have to deal with. Right. It takes about 9 months.
What, like Cavalier, for example, what's their usage? How, are they 10 megawatts? How big of a system are they?
I forget, there are 6 or 7, but
Okay, so they're quite a bit
again, they
smaller.
just don't have the industrial base that you guys have. They just haven't added a lot of load. So what they had for WAPA, their loads have just stable and they just haven't added to it. So yeah, they're just kind of stable.
That's kind
that
of
way.
the true with Lakota and Northwood too then, or?
Yeah, to some extent. Yeah, they've got a little bit bigger share of WAPA, about 25 to 30%. So
Oh,
they're a
okay.
little bit more, but yeah.
Valley City, they're kind of in that same range too.
Yep. But again, there's other factors at play in terms of transfers that they pay and all those other things as well, so, yeah.
Good.
Yeah, it's,
Need
yeah.
Wi-Fi.
I think Cavalier's smaller, but yeah, so. Small commercial and large commercial side, you can see small commercial currently also has a $20 customer charge, but an 8.5 cent energy rate. Typically what we see for small commercial is either the customer charge is higher than residential or the energy rate is higher than residential or both. And so right now you've got the energy rate is significantly lower. Based on the cost allocations, we're showing that that should go up over time. So we are suggesting some increases here. Small commercial will go up to $37 per month, and then they would also see the seasonal rates of nearly a cent difference by 2030. So again, that's at anyone up to 50 kilowatts. That's the bulk of the commercial customers in town. And then,
But if we didn't, for whatever reason, didn't do the rate or the demand charges, then for sure the energy charge for those large commercials has to be the same as the rest.
Yeah, they would go to that 9.7 and the 9.2, and that would yield about the same revenues as if they went to the large commercial rates. So it would be about a wash. They wouldn't, each individual customer wouldn't pay exactly the same, but in total you'd be okay.
Right.
Yep. So you could still fall back to those if you need
If
to.
we're not ready for those demand charges,
Yes.
we should put in those other
Then everyone would pay small commercial. Yep. So you can see on the large commercial side, we'd be phasing in the demand rates very slowly over time. So typically our members see demand rates anywhere from $15 to $20 per kW, and you wouldn't get to that level until 2030. And so again, we're trying to be gradual with this to kind of step in the increases over time in these customers. So that would be kind of the large commercial side of things. A lot more details behind the scenes, but that's kind of how things would look if you went that route. So just a couple more comparisons. This is small commercial, so this is 2,000 or 2,500 kilowatt hours. So kind of a small downtown business or a small non-demand meter business. Hillsboro, you can see in this chart, is actually the second lowest. You're kind of at a dead heat with Cavalier. So remember what I talked about a couple minutes ago where we're trying to see if you're at about the same position on the graph? This kind of shows that most utilities would actually charge quite a bit more for these customers. And so that, again, is showing up in the cost allocations as well. At the bottom half of the chart, you can see the median here is 21% higher. So you're very competitive here, more competitive than you are with residential. But again, that's probably because these rates are maybe just a little bit lower than they should be. So these are all things we want to look at in the study, certainly not faulting anything, just want to kind of move forward with some changes to better reflect costs. So these customers will go up about 11% next year with the rates. Then moving on to large commercial. So this is a higher load factor customer, similar to maybe a grocery store or a medical facility, convenience station. These are customers that are open many hours a day. They've got lighting loads. They've got steady usage throughout the month. So that's kind of the setup for this graph. You can see Hillsboro is the fourth lowest here. Once again, kind of in that middle third of the chart, similar to residential. The median is 8% higher. And so that's really something I want to emphasize. You're not starting out at the high end of the chart right here. You're starting out pretty competitive. That's a good place to be when we're looking at, unfortunately, some increases, but you're still looking okay here, at least in the initial years. And again, all these utilities are going to be moving up over time. Nearly all of them are going to have some sort of increases going forward. So this is not going to be a static chart. Everything's going to be moving to the right over time. So if I do this in 5 years, we'll all be higher. So the last chart then is another large commercial customer. This is maybe more of a manufacturing customer with welding loads, which tend to be a little more intermediate. And so you can see there, again, you're the third lowest, and the median there at the bottom is 25% higher. So again, a lot of other utilities, if they have demand charges, would charge more for this type of customer than Hillsboro is. So yeah, that's okay. So these are all things we want to do in the rate study: rebalance rates, try to get you to where you need. So to summarize, first I want to say a big thank you to Casey. I asked for a lot of data, and especially these last 6 weeks, and she really stepped up and did a super job of getting that to me so that we could get to this point. So really appreciate all your help on that. Thanks to Paul and Roy and Levi and all their input as well. So it really took a lot to get here, but I appreciate the opportunity to present this. We're looking at rate increases over the next 5 years. This plan is going to change. I'm pretty confident you're going to need these 9% increases, but the details are going to change over time, and we're very happy to assist in the coming years. The study spreadsheets are all set up. We can easily drop in some new numbers as we need to. But I don't think that should stop you from looking at these rate increases at least in the next few years to kind of get you where you need to be. It's going to reflect purchase power costs. Again, you're going to fund these important projects. And I think the other thing is we want to get you in place so that those last two phases, you're kind of well situated to continue to plan going forward. Hopefully get some load growth. Hopefully see some positive things here too. So with that, again, thanks. If you've got any other questions, we'll be happy to help you either tonight or in the future. So,
How often should we do the rate study?
I would say for you guys, every 3 to 4 years would be great, just because I know that some things are going to change over time, and that's similar to what other utilities are doing too. So yeah, I definitely want to look at that, but that shouldn't stop you from calling earlier if something changes. You know, we can certainly help you in the meantime, but yeah, full study.
I just don't want it to be for
Yeah.
13 years?
13 years.
18 years, yeah.
More than that, 18 years, huh?
Yeah. No, it'd be good, and I think we've got some good contacts here and some good people we can work with, and yeah, that'd be great.
Anybody have any questions?
Anything else I missed, Travis?
Cavalier was, in May, was about 3 megawatts.
Yep.
You guys were about 4.75 megawatts, so a little smaller.
Yep.
But obviously it's, must have more industry because city-wide size, we're about the same.
They have, yeah, I think they've got some governmental load with the courthouse and some things up there. So yeah, that's.
We're pretty much the same size as residential and those things, but not.
Yeah.
Obviously, our growth has to be the industrial. Yeah, the industrial that's with Anchor increasing production and Dagelman's increasing production.
Yep.
Yeah. No, I think looking at the demand charges, when you guys are ready to implement those, I think that would provide some value, as Tim talked about, being able to pay for what they're using. So you're not, and I think we talked about this last November, you know, not putting too much burden on the residents, even though they're the larger percentage of your customer base. You know, at the end of the day, if they're running while you're peaking, you're going to have a lot more purchase power costs than a house is going to have. So you got to make sure you're equitably charging your customers across the board. So again, Emeritus does a fantastic job with this. They're actually doing our water rate study right now, and we'll be talking about that here in a few weeks. So it's, yeah, they've got a good plan. So.
And for me, working a lot with Missouri River, I just can't appreciate enough what they do for us, and you guys, and across the whole board, no matter what it is, the programs you guys have to offer. You know, there's a reason why you don't have too many people complain about being a member of Missouri River. You know, from Travis and Eric and Chad, all these guys, they probably remember we first met on this, not this year in June, but June 3rd of last year was when this process started. So it's been a very long coming, but like he said, there was a lot of data that Casey had to get. So there was a lot of meetings put into this. The first meeting we had Eric and Travis. We even had Mel and Jim. Mel Nagel was on that meeting. So we had a lot of people that you know, when we first met to start this process, and every one of them echoed the same thing, the urgency of it. And I can't thank you guys enough for bringing this up to us and kind of putting a brighter light on it, so to speak, because you know, we knew we were getting there, and now we got the numbers to show it. So, and then everything to prove it. So I just can't thank you guys enough for all you do for us. So
Okay, thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
If there's no other questions, you guys are free to go unless you want to stick around for the rest. Maybe we'll take just a couple minutes if anybody wants to go to the restroom.
Thanks a lot. Thanks, Art, for coming. And Rick, thanks for coming. I know you didn't have to, so I appreciate it.
No worries, it got me out of the fiber you got hit down.
Okay. Always looking for the bright side. I like that.
We didn't have internet until about 3 o'clock on, so.
When you did your, portion up there, were you still having in that, dairy farm that you want to put down?
Say, Roy, this is the gentleman that I sent you his address for. Remember I sent you, I texted you an address and you said Brian was looking at it? This is the gentleman that had them lines over by Storms.
Right behind Storms is the last,
I texted you that address for him.
There's the Nordak, box up there on the pole. The wires are coming off, and then there's also wires all the way through around the pole because
Yeah, I think Brian went and looked at it, I think it was communication.
well, that was Midco, the one wire, because they came out and looked at it, and then they said the transformer is different from the Midco.
Right. I can go by and look at it tomorrow or something, and swing by just to verify, but yeah, we'll look at it.
Yeah.
It's right behind Storms, right?
Yeah, the storm, and then there's trees, there's a power line.
Oh, yeah, we've trimmed those trees back before.
Well, the power line's right in the middle of the trees now.
Yeah, it grows up fast, yeah. We had a lot of issues getting to that.
Yeah, well, I trimmed my tree too, the last storm, the tree went over and almost took out the power line.
Yeah.
And I cut it down, so.
Sure, I'll swing by tomorrow. Bye, guys.
About that, my neighbor said that, when that storm came through, the transformer took it, sparked.
Yeah, we'll have to do it.
Yeah,
We will.
but that's an old Nordak.
Yeah. We'll double check it, for sure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's how it works. Yeah, we got everything set.
So we'll move on. Casey, if you want to pull up the resolution. Paul had asked us to make a motion or something. I thought a resolution would be the best because then it's more flexible. It is, it's stating that we want to move forward on this. It is not a hard, fast, or we have to go back and change it. But a resolution still is something that we would adopt, and that we're saying that we want to make sure that we are doing these things because we see that it's important for our community. And so hopefully everybody had a chance to read that. But the biggest thing is that we want to move forward the electrical infrastructure upgrades as recommended by DGR. That doesn't mean that we're following it to the T. It just means that we are moving towards that direction of, okay, now this puts us in place to start, if we're going to bid out, if we're going to do these things to, because our next step on this is, step one is securing the funding. That we can, which means we have to increase our rates to show that we can show the Bank of North Dakota we're going to pay these off. And then from there, we can also use this to look at low interest loans or grants. I think it's next week, Wednesday, Paul said he's going to go down to the Industrial Commission meeting where we're going to find out if we'll get the grant or not that we applied for. There's another grant that I would like to apply for that we'll talk about later. So it just gives us guidance to move forward, to do things so that we are being the most fiscally responsible, the best practice we can to do what we need to do to make sure we can keep the lights on for everybody, and that we can also get the growth that we need. Because ultimately, if residents want to have a cheaper something, we have to spread the price out somehow. So that means we have to grow a little bit. Somebody asked me one time, how big do you want to grow Hillsboro? It's, well, do you want a gas station? Do you want a grocery store? How many people do you need to support that then? If you want these things, how many people does it take to support? So Paul, do you want to make the official motion on it?
Yeah, I'll move that we do the resolution as printed. I think, for some reason, I can't pull it up on mine, but it's up there, so. And everybody should have got a copy. I see he's got his, so. It's rather lengthy, but it covers a lot of what we want, and that's the reason why I thank Casey for doing this and Levi, because I wanted to make sure that we covered everything that they felt was necessary to move forward on this project. And that's why I asked them to do it, to make sure, because I knew that they would have to type it up when I made it anyway, so I figured let's get it ahead of time and have it so that there's no questions. Everybody's had a chance to read, check the wording on it and everything, and so I move that we do the resolution for the electrical project, recommendations of DGR moving forward.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Jason, moved by Paul. And so the 4 key things are those where it says now therefore it be resolved. Anything before that is just information about it, but the 4 key things are those 4. Is there any other discussion on the resolution? Any other discussion? And this will help Casey and I when we're trying to find financing for it, when or if we're looking at when you guys are doing rates, well, we have to refer back to this and says, this is what you guys wanted to do, or future commissions, so that it's there for them. Is there any other discussion?
Yeah, has anybody heard anybody, I know we put some dollar amounts, or Paul's put some dollar amounts, have anybody complained about that in town? I haven't heard anybody speak to it, but I'm not in town as much as you guys are.
Surprisingly, I haven't heard anything from day one, every rate. I have not heard. I've heard more people that probably have said, well, we got good rates. You know, they were basically saying they were good rates, so.
And you can see that from what Tim put forward, that we did have good rates compared to what other communities have. So.
And that, like he said, that helped us, because we had, instead of being up on this end, you know, and then going up, you know, we're already down on the low end, and now we're going up. And I think the important thing that he mentioned when they left was that those rates are gonna also go up too. So just because theirs aren't gonna stay the same, ours may go up, but theirs will too, so.
If I could say something, electric in our office hasn't been complained about. Sewer, you know, that's had a few comments, especially this year, but not electric.
And the other key aspect on this one that I made sure Casey added on was the very last one that says we'll allocate revenues in a separate fund so that we are going to start saving for this. And that's day one when we put the rates in. We'll figure out whether it's 30%, 35%, we got to put it away every month, put it in that separate fund so that when it comes time, even if we don't put into play this project, we hold off and we start in 2027. Well, now we've built that up and we can pay that off right away. So
Right now your generation fund is in its own separate fund, so that's kind of a nice starting point to, if you ever want to look at that.
And that's kind of what I suggested too, is change the name of it or something, but
Yep.
in that generation fund, that's where we get those payments from Missouri River every month for the generators. Is there any other discussion?
I'm glad that everybody's on board with it, and we were hoping, just to kind of spin off what he said, we were hoping to maybe potentially bid this already this fall, correct? That's the timeline?
Yep, that's what we have discussed in that meeting with everybody on one day, and on our whiteboard.
On our whiteboard, it's probably still there, so.
It is, yeah.
But that means then we've got to get those things into play, because we'll have some issues. As we learned this year, we should have applied for the loans through the Bank of North Dakota, because now that's once a year, so we have to make sure that we are in that. And maybe that's some legislation things that we need to look at, talk to our legislators and say, is there a way to help us out to get some of those funds, or maybe they need to increase the amount. So, any other discussion? Paul?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Jason?
Yes.
Nicole?
Yes.
And a yes for me. Motion carries. I think we'll do old business first. There was a request from the group that met, and I believe Nicole was on that, to reopen the public works position because they just felt there wasn't the candidate qualities that they were looking for. I don't know that we necessarily need a motion for that, unless you would really appreciate it, but otherwise, as long as everybody's in agreement with that, we can move forward with reopening it up. Nicole, if you have anything you want to add on that?
Were there areas of more concern that they were lacking in certain areas, or they wanted to address certain areas more in a hire, more of an expertise, or what was kind of the little bit of everything?
I think there was I don't know if you guys looked at the application, some of the applications were not above par, and that I think was concerning to some of them, and then one of them was not a full-time position or couldn't be hired full-time, and the other one I don't think was going to be long-term, so that's the way I took it anyways. You can correct me if I'm wrong, that's kind of what I had understood.
Was that the only hang up with that one, is the one wasn't full-time available?
That was, I did request his schedule for his other job, and I do have it in my office. So I did let him know that one public works supervisor, was interested, and possibly a few commissioners are looking at that. So I can go get that if you guys would like to look at it.
And that one, I mean, there's another place where we were planning on hiring another person here in the next year, so if you guys want to look at him potentially as a second one, that might be a better option.
That would be my question, is if there's a way with the next budget, obviously you put in for a full-time position, but we don't always get what we want when that final budget comes down. If this is something that's more workable, and we save a bunch of medical benefits and all kinds of benefits, and he's able to work 3/4 time, it's pretty nice help.
Right, and I guess when we looked at the budget and asked the staff what they wanted, and they want another person, it's hard to hire. You don't get a part-time person generally, so this would be an opportunity that, I don't know if you guys thought he was a good candidate or not. I thought you guys said that. So, if you want to offer early and do that, there's probably room in our budget. We could make it work because we're going to save it in the end next year.
There's room. Me personally, I'd be interested if Public Works is interested in exploring if that's an option.
Okay. As the second person and.
Right. Yeah. And if we have room that we can absorb it for the rest of this year until next year, or, if we figure out when we could afford, maybe we had to operate down the road a little bit further, but if we get a position, or if we can get somebody in, that's gonna help those guys. Either way.
Yeah, I think Zach is interested. It was, I'd given him some time to think about how that would work if it was a 3/4 time, because that person does not need benefits or anything. And so I asked him to kind of look at what that would look like from a schedule standpoint, to ensure that Zach isn't like his vacation time too, and things like that. So I think they're just waiting on a schedule from him to see if that's a workable thing.
Yeah, it's in my office right now. Yeah, that'd be good for the budget too. He's really.
So we can work together to try to figure out if it'll work, and then we'll open up the other one for. Okay.
Do you need a motion to reopen it, or?
I don't think so, because it's more of a reminder, or just letting you guys know. And do you want a motion?
The only question would be, do you want me to advertise like I did before? We put it in the paper, we can put it on the radio, and then I put it on Facebook.
I would do it the same as before. The one other question is, do we need to change the, because there was a request that more of a mechanic, but that's not in the job description. So, and it's hard to if we're gonna add more in, then what do you take out? But that's the problem with our jobs, that they're so vague, or they're not vague, they're very,
They do a lot of duties.
they do a lot of duties, so. I just don't know that we can
Something-
afford a mechanic.
Unless
salary.
you worded something, I suppose, maybe on the line of preference leaning towards mechanical
Mechanical experience.
medical experience would be given. But I understand every time you gotta change a job description for that, you gotta change it.
I don't know if,
I read the position description and I thought it pretty encompassed everything, like she had some preferred and, would like to look at.
right, okay. That was the only question I had. I couldn't remember off the top of my head, but I knew that was a question that.
It was on the right-hand side of the
Okay.
advertisement.
All right, well then we'll go into commission reports, and I'm gonna do it different tonight, because I have a lot. So maybe we'll cut, Paul gets cut off, he used all of his time for
Yeah,
this.
I was gonna say that anyways.
Are we using a 5-minute time limit or something like that?
We might need to.
I was gonna forfeit all my time.
So Paul, I believe, is gonna go on the 30th, and Roy had expressed interest to go to see about that grant application for, the electrical service. The other grant that I hope you guys will approve for, and maybe we just gotta write a list, Casey, because there's quite a few, so.
Say that one more time.
Maybe we should just make a list of all the things we want grants to apply for right now, so, for approval, because there's several. So it's one motion instead of making individual motions for everything. But the first one is, so the North Dakota Department of Ag has an ag infrastructure grant that is available and open, and Anchor Ingredients is looking at expanding up. And so I would ask, the first ask is to apply for that infrastructure grant. It's up to $300,000 or 80% of the project that can be covered through that ag infrastructure grant.
Is that something that since it's something Anchor wants to request?
It's the municipality, because the grant is for, it's the same one that we were gonna apply for last year for the road, but they couldn't do it, or, we didn't make the cut, and we didn't make the cut this year. It's a city of 1,500 or less that could apply for the road portion of it, but we can apply for the, infrastructure part of it, so the electrical, water, sewer. So that's the first one. Second one is the flex funding that is there for the roads that was available. And I also reached out to Anchor and gave them an info on it, so if potentially we could do a group project or work with them to improve the road to Anchor. So, and there was several plans, that was that task order that Steve had did for us a while back. There's 3 different things up to $1 million, but there's $350,000 for that project as well that could be used in the flex funds through DOT. So I request that we look at applying for that. And both of these, looking at using Abby with AE2S to help us again. So, and she said she was willing, so. The third grant that we'd like to apply for is there's a North Dakota Tree Grant, and that is for 1-for-1 with the emerald ash borer that is coming in. They will allow us to take out 1 ash tree and replace it with 1 ash tree, up to $25,000. There's not a matching grant, but we'd like to apply for that one as well. You guys had mentioned that. That'll help. We can maybe take out some of the storm trees that are ash and get those worked in. They have to be on the boulevard or public properties. I did reach out to the school. They have 10 trees, I think it is, total on their boulevards, and they're willing to do that 1-for-1 there too, so.
Do we know how many ash trees are down on the boulevard?
80%. A lot. If you were really curious, if you go onto our website under Under city services, there's a Hillsboro tree inventory. And you can look at the tip. It's through the Forest Service, but you can actually look at it and you will see every tree that they did the study on a few years ago. So, but that's a Forest Service grant. All right, those are the 3 grants. So I'd entertain a motion if you guys agree to apply for those.
How much money would we have to come up for to finish those projects, and where would it come out of?
The flex fund, we could bond, we could also use the municipal infrastructure fund. The infrastructure, we would take that out of electrical anyways, so it's just saving us money. We'd have to pay for the project, we're just getting money to help pay for it. And with the flex funding, my hope is that I can ask Anchor if they're willing to help put into the project. If they want to do the pavement past where the access is to Riverwalk, maybe they'll help kick into that portion of it. So. Before we submit it, I'd make sure you guys know the numbers. I just want approval so that I can get Abby to work on it and get working with Anchor. So.
Any preliminary cost for that, for her to do that?
I haven't gotten a number. I would assume it's probably going to be very similar to the last ones, which has been anywhere from 2 to 6.
I think 4 was the last one she did. And that was the big one for the electric.
Okay. So,
That was that how many pages long one?
yeah. Do I have a motion or any other questions?
I move to apply for those grants.
Those 3 grants. Is there a second? Moved by Paul, seconded by Nicole. Any other discussion? John?
Yes.
Nicole?
Yes.
Jason?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
A yes for me. Motion carries. Just an FYI for you, in the office, we added some security issue cameras in there for Casey. We took that money for those is basically allocated what we saved for computers this year. So computer security, but basically so that in the end, the 2 in the back office will be able to see what's going on, and if we have any unruly customers come in again, it'll be recorded within the office. So there's no monthly charge on it, and it stays in-house. So if there's any issues, Casey can check in. It's the same system that we're using at the swimming pool, and so if things go well with it, I thought it would be a good trial. We can add it in our other buildings as well to make sure that we're able to go good. Fire department, I need an okay to sign off on paperwork that JR has looked at. It's basically the easements and agreements as those come forward. So I just need a motion allowing us to sign off on those.
I'll make the motion.
Jason makes a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Seconded by John. Is there any other discussion? Paul?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Nicole? Jason?
Yes.
And a yes for me. Motion carries. The DOT did sign off on the easement for the access for our proposed plan. They will give the permit in hand. I already signed off on it for the fire department. As soon as the contractor is selected, and then they show that they have insurance for it. So that part of it is done for them. The last thing I have is a water agreement with East Central. I got a phone call from Neil today. We were planning we had the first agreement that we are allowing them access to use the land. This agreement, this motion that you guys would make tonight, instead of putting it in the next big packet of an agreement, basically you guys would make a motion to allow them to use our excess water and we would sell it. Raw water. So they would use our existing wells. They're not gonna add any wells in. They would tie into our system. We'd keep track of the water, same as we do buy water from them. So, but it's just allowing them to use our excess permitted amount of water. I did talk to Nicole about it, so she understood. If at any point we need that water, they know that. But it's mostly for them until they get a new line coming up from their wells where we get our other raw water from. So.
And that's clearly in the agreement, JR? That's clear in the agreement that it's just excess?
Where it's competitive for a while.
Yep, it's not going to be in that agreement. Before, in the agreement, we talked about having them build wells, and those, we're not gonna do that. We're just saying, we're agreeing, we're stating in a motion that we will allow them to use our excess water that we have permits for that we're not using.
And that we can.
And we're gonna sell it basically per gallon or however, per 100. So when their treatment plant comes up, if they don't have those lines in, they would be able to tie into our water and meter it, and they would filter it and sell it at their own. Whether it's, I don't know, 9 cents or 4 cents or whatever we pay right now for raw water. Instead of putting in easements and all this other agreements and stuff, this is a simpler way to get this portion of it done. We still have to sign off on the bigger agreement of what we're going to do. But the motion should be made that we are allowing East Central to use our excess water permit, water from the Hillsboro aquifers, and at any time we need that water, they understand that it would be, we would take that back over, whatever we're not. Because if we get, say, 100,000 cubic acre feet of it, and they're gonna use 90 of it, and we need 5, well then we're okay. But if we need to go up to 50, well then they know that they will have to drop down. We always get first access to it.
And this isn't gonna affect our bargaining powers with the rest of the agreement?
There's still a lot of other stuff in the agreement.
I know they were playing, they had a vision on what the electric should cost them, and I don't want us to do all these favors for them, and then we get down to the end of the thing, and all of a sudden they're like, we appreciate you helping us while we're building, but we're gonna go with these guys.
They can't do that on the electric. So we already let them know. I let them know what, I actually gave them a little bit ahead of what this was, so that they knew that this is, we can't offer right at this point. So, and Neil had said, okay, they'll make it work. So they're in the same business that we are. They're trying to, it's a government entity. They want to put it at the cheapest rate that they can to their customers. So, but this is the last portion of it, and I don't want to say that it's official, but it sounded like this is the next step that they needed to make sure that it was finalized. So, do I have a motion or any other questions?
Make the motion.
Okay, Nicole makes the motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Paul. Is there any other discussion? Jason?
Yes.
Nicole?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
And a yes for me. Motion carries. And the last thing I have is just one question for you guys. So, it's more of a question.
I was thinking about it.
What? I didn't hear what you said.
She said no.
Oh. Well, fine then, it's a benefit for you guys, so I'll just keep my mouth shut then. We need one more TV to put in to Chris's office. And so we were thinking that we would move that one instead of buying a smaller one. Kind of like we moved the one that was in the commission chambers, and we put a bigger TV in the commission chambers and moved that smaller TV into Casey's office for her to watch. So would you prefer, which would work, we could move that TV in and then we can move that one over there so that you guys would have a bigger view that are sitting on this side, and then we could look at a bigger one here, or we could just look at a bigger one there and leave that one the same. This one's a 70 and I think we could get an 80 or 85 for a fairly reasonable price.
I think that one's plenty big.
I think so too, I'm not sure.
Will that fit up there?
That one would
Will
fit
that
up there,
fit up there?
yes. Yes,
It's
it
gotta be real
would.
close.
It would, yes. I did look at it, it does fit, so. I just wanted to know which, otherwise we'll just get a
John won't
little
budge
bigger
that
one
on
for
one?
there, so.
I'm
Walking
down
through
there,
that.
and just a little bit.
Bigger over there?
We don't need it much more.
Because we were looking at a 65 over there is what I had planned, and it'll fit a 70, so. I didn't know if you wanted bigger than, I didn't know what this one was. I mean, if you really wanted, we could get a 100-inch here.
That is a little small for me, and when I sit over here, it's hard, I gotta kind of sometimes turn back.
That was my thought when I was.
It works good probably, actually from here it works good, but.
You guys probably see it. I didn't know if you guys can see it really well.
Right,
I
together.
usually look at that one anyway.
Paul and I have to turn our head.
Maybe we gotta keep this, maybe we gotta keep this arrangement, then we won't even need that one, we can all look over here.
Maybe, I don't know, so.
Cause it worked nice tonight to watch all that from here versus if it would have been someplace else, so.
Great. We'll figure it out, so, okay. I just wanted your opinion on it. Paul, you said you didn't have
I
anything,
have
so you're
nothing,
next.
no.
John?
Bambi just emailed me today and they said the kitchen's done at the armory. She still doesn't have a date on the playground construction yet, but from what she's heard, it's gonna be in August, so she'll keep us in the loop on that date. Other than that, I don't have anything.
I did forget, since Paul didn't, usually Paul brings it up, on beautification. The funding has been made, for the fence, so they were able to secure, so you'll start seeing that being put in. No city dollars are being put into that. And then the borough should be coming back fairly soon. I'm gonna go on Wednesday to pick up. John got us hooked up with some stuff. So I gotta go to Huron to pick it up on Wednesday, but we'll get
Not
that
gonna
in.
get it?
We didn't wait till West Fargo had
But it might take a month or two, so I didn't wanna wait that long.
No, it might be a little long.
Yep, so. The goal, is maybe get the borough unveiled here, around, homecoming would be a good goal that we're gonna look for, so. But, and that is all covered thanks to the travel, or not the, lodging tax, so that's all covered as well, so. He came in under budget, so we're able to do a couple more things there, so that'll help, so. John, you had everything? Jason?
I have nothing.
Nicole? Geez, I'm the only one tonight? Okay. Anything else for the good of the order? Okay, just an FYI, I will not be here next meeting. So you have to listen to Paul.
Put up with me.
Do I have a motion to adjourn?
We never asked.
Oh, sorry.
We missed her.
Hey, wait, I forgot.
We missed
We forgot about those two, sorry.
I only have one small thing.
All right, Casey.
You guys should have gotten the email, today with, salary, with that salary spreadsheet. Nicole had asked that I would send that out, so I did that today. That's a suggested starting point for whatever, so there's no rhythm and rhyme behind it outside of what I know other cities kind of do as far as adding in a COLA and then adding in a longevity percentage, what have you, whatever you wanna call it. So, use it as a tool, and if you guys wanna talk more about it, have suggestions, I'm, very happy to get together, so. But yeah, it's ultimately up to you guys on how you wanna handle it,
And with that, that's just a guideline, that's, when we put the budget together, or when Casey put it, that's kind of the max, so we can move around in there, but the total dollars, if you want to keep the budget the way it is, that you guys kind of looked at, you don't want to go above that. But if we are able to move it around, or bring others down, or however you want to do it, then that ultimately will make the budget look a little bit more entertaining.
Will discuss next meeting,
I was gonna say during our budget hearing might be a good time to do it. Give everybody time to digest it, and I think our budget hearing we set for September,
one of the meetings.
the first September meeting, so.
That's true.
So I did review it. I would just say to think about one thing of, and I'm not sure if it's in the handbook or not, I don't recall it, but if somebody's in their probationary period and they get their increase after their probation, do you want to see where they also get an increase as well, like the rest of the staff, or is it they get their increase after their probation and then the following year? So for example, Casey got hired and she got her increase after probation. She did not get any of those increases.
And that's generally how we've done it in the past.
And so just for consistency or whatever, just something to think about when you look at this spreadsheet.
Anything else, Casey?
I don't think so. If it's, if it's kind of a touchy topic where you guys want a special meeting set up outside of a regular meeting, just to talk about that, let me know. I'm happy to check people's schedules. I know it's kind of a,
Might be more of a time thing than more time.
yeah, it's a discussion topic.
It is.
So just
But-
wanted to let you know that.
We cannot have a executive session on it based off of, another city got dinged on that one, so.
Yep, it's gotta be a public meeting, but, if you don't wanna have it during a regular meeting, you can set up a special one.
But we can, let's plan for the first meeting in September to talk about that in the budget, if you want to make sure you send out the full budget to everybody. And then
Yeah.
that'll be kind of our time to look at it. JR, do you have lots tonight?
Nothing for me.
One last reminder, just so you guys are aware, you guys approved this before, but tomorrow Casey and the rest of the office staff are out, so Shacey will be in there while they're in training, so. Any other things that I missed? Nope. Do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting? Is there a second?
I'll second.
Moved by Nicole, seconded by Jason. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Meeting is adjourned.